A group of conscientious objectors has been secretly sent to France by the army against their will. Their commanding officer in Boulogne has warned them that if they continue to disobey orders, they could face the maximum penalty. But was the officer just bluffing? If he was bluffing, what we've got to decide before we go back to camp is whether we're prepared to call his bluff. Whether we're prepared to take this all the way to the last ditch. Bad news. Clifford Allen has just been arrested, which means it now falls to me to take over from him as acting chairman of the No Conscription Fellowship. The organisation is divided into a number of departments, the most important of which is the Records Department. In effect, the intelligence arm of the NCF. This department is the brainchild of an exceptional young woman who was instrumental in the struggle for women's... Thank you, comrade. I can introduce myself. Catherine Marshall, previously involved in the struggle for women's suffrage, now devoting myself utterly to the cause of the C.O.s. I've introduced a system whereby every known conscientious objector has his own record card, regularly marked up with his movements and events of importance in his army or prison career. Each card is duplicated in case the first set should be lost or taken by the police. Our offices are constantly being raided by the police. Not just our offices, Bertie. No less than 150 NCF branch officials have had their homes raided. Printing presses have been smashed and broken up. Catherine Marshall speak...
This is Major General Wyndham Childs.
Major General Wyndham Childs.
In my opinion, Miss Marshall, the NCF is a pernicious organisation.
But Major General...
Personally, I believe that those of you in charge of it should be dealt with
But Major...
under the Incitement to Mutiny Act.
Fire! A sound that will be music to the ears of many an officer having to deal with disobedient C.O.s. But that sound has not been heard. Not yet. Our day at the seaside over, we return to camp, are given orders, and refuse to obey them. But the army doesn't impose the maximum penalty just yet.
Field punishment number 1 requires the offender's arms to be fully stretched out and tied to a gun wheel or beam or rope about 5.5 feet high. In addition, his feet are tied closely together. He will then stand in this position for 2 hours every day, up to a maximum of 28 days. Field punishment number 1 was introduced into the army as a substitute for flogging, being considered more humane.
You can see why it's more commonly known as crucifixion. It's actually a form of torture, especially in the case of the shorter men, who are virtually hanging by the wrists. To make matters less comfortable, it begins to rain, and a cold wind blows straight across the top of the hill. Bertie, they're in Boulogne. Who's in Boulogne? The C.O.s. One of the men from Richmond Castle, Brocklesby, sent a postcard to his family, who sent it on to the NCF. Look. My goodness. This means they're in serious danger then. We must act. A small delegation consisting of myself, Catherine Marshall speaking, Bertrand Russell, Philip Morell, and Philip Snowden, Independent Labour Party MP, managed to secure a meeting with the Prime Minister. Thank you. We're released from our crucifixion. And the sergeant gives us what he swears is our last chance to knuckle down and obey. He orders us to pick up a case of bully beef. I start to explain to him, firmly but reasonably, that we're sorry, but we cannot obey any orders which come from a military authority.
Sorry be damned, you bastard. All of you, you're all idle fucking bastards. And the sooner the lot of you are 6 feet under pushing up the fucking daisies, the better, you useless pack of fucking cowards. Now get back to your cells.
35 of us are now court-martialed, found guilty, and sent to punishment barracks to await our sentences. If I'd been there and was given one last chance, what would I have done? Would I have refused to pick up the case?
May 1916, Prime Minister Asquith prepares to set off for Dublin, where, the Easter Rebellion having just been crushed, he hopes he will be able to find a solution to the intractable Irish problem. The Prime Minister will see your delegation now.
Ah, do all come in, won't you? This will have to be brief, I'm afraid, as I'm off to Dublin at any moment. We don't exactly know what's said in this meeting, or who speaks first. Is it Catherine Marshall? We do appreciate how busy you are, Prime Minister. What we're concerned about is this, that in spite of the many assurances that have been given in Parliament that those who resist conscription will not be liable for the death penalty, there still seems to exist a considerable amount of doubt over this. No, Miss Marshall. There's no doubt. I imagine Bertrand Russell is saying nothing, biding his time. Perhaps Philip Morel speaks now. But conscientious objectors are being threatened with it on an almost daily basis, Prime Minister. By whom? Officers? Soldiers? No, Philip, it's quite clear. The death penalty cannot be imposed in this country on anyone resisting conscription. The Army's sentencing powers are quite limited in that respect. Still, Russell is silent. Perhaps Philip Snowden intervenes. In this country, yes. But what happens when these C.O.s are taken to France, Prime Minister? Into the war zone, where anyone refusing to obey orders can in fact be subjected to the death penalty. I assure you all, if any C.O.s are ever taken to France, that will not occur. It's now that I imagine Russell cannot contain himself any longer. It's not if. Why haven't you shown the postcard, Catherine? They're there, Prime Minister, they're there, in Boulogne, refusing to obey orders as we speak, perhaps being court-martialed, as we speak, possibly being sentenced to death even, as we speak. You're certain these men are in Boulogne? We've received information, Prime Minister, which is more, I'm afraid to say, than can be said for your government. The fact is, C.O.s are being sent by the army to France, seemingly without anyone's knowledge. God! I wish I wasn't so old. What do you mean, Bertie? I wish I were of an age, Catherine, that I could be called up, and so be arrested, and take my stand alongside these fearless young men. If casualties continue at the current rate, Russell, you may yet get your wish. The point is, will they be shot? Because if these C.O.s are executed simply because their consciences would not permit them to take up arms against a fellow human being, it will be the greatest stain imaginable on our nation's reputation.
Prisoners falling!
A week waiting in the punishment barracks.
Prisoners, falling!
And then finally, we're marched to the parade ground at Unrieville.
Left, right, left, come on, left, right, left.
March to the parade ground high above the sea to hear our sentences read out. Only we don't march. We never do. We just walk.
Halt! Bastards.
Private John Hubert Brocklesby, step forward. There are 1,000 soldiers assembled on 3 sides of a square. the adjutant on the fourth side, his back to the sea.
Private John Hubert Brocklesby of the 2nd Eastern Company Non-Combatant Corps, you have been charged with persistent refusal to obey orders while on active service in France. You have been tried by a Field General Court-Martial and have been found guilty.
He pauses. There's a sinking feeling in my stomach, wondering what's going to turn up.
Your sentence is as follows.
He pauses again. Longer this time.
Death by shooting.
Well, that's that then. I hear someone behind me saying,
Christ, if they shoot Methodists, you and me will be burnt at the stake.
Quiet! Sentence awaiting confirmation by the Commander-in-Chief, General Sir Douglas Haig.
he consults his papers.
Sentence confirmed.
I seem to accept the fact, almost without concern. My mind seems to be occupied mechanically and dispassionately with considering the immediate practical effects. It will be a great trial for you, Mother, won't it? And Father, your health has been so poorly of late. How will you recover from this? Annie. Annie. This will truly break your heart.
But afterwards commuted by the Commander-in-Chief to penal servitude for 10 years.
What? What?
We've done it, Bert! We've won, man!
I feel something surging up within me. Joy. Triumph. Pride. To be one of this noble army of C.O.s engaged in the most glorious struggle that has ever been fought. Bar none.
Private Brocklesby, it's a long-standing tradition in the army to acknowledge the courage of the enemy. I think you men are very brave men. But 10 years penal servitude, good luck with that.
10 years.